Well, good morning, Intuitive Pool community, for the very last time. Today is the 21st of April, and I felt the pull last night that this morning would be the time to record this final episode. This is a full episode. Firstly, I want to talk about what I learned by committing to publish regular episodes on the Intuitive Pool podcast since the end of 2021. It's been very rich, and I hope that you get a lot of takeouts from my experience. And secondly, I want to talk about what I'm super present to now, because I have never had a year like this year ever before. And again, just like the experience of podcasting has been so rich, this year has been extremely generous in all that has poured out of me. So first of all, I want to share what my experience was like after I had decided to complete the Intuitive Pool podcast. I caught up with the statistics of how many episodes I recorded and how many downloads people had listened to this podcast. This will be the 219th episode, and there were over 110,000 downloads since the end of 2021. A friend of mine called James, who hopefully will be listening to this podcast, wrote a private message to me and said, I remember when we had a conversation when you, Giselle, said that you had an intention to reach 100,000 downloads. Congratulations, because you exceeded that. And do you know, I had actually forgotten that I had made that intention until James reminded me. And then I absolutely remembered the moment. I remember the time that I told my former coach, Daniel, and I remember the moment that I told James. And let me tell you, when I felt that number, 110,000 downloads, it was like an intention akin to going to Mars. It felt so far in the future, and actually even, such a pie in the sky goal. And so when I caught up with those statistics, and including the 219 episodes, and also the fact that I changed how I delivered these podcast episodes a couple of years ago, where I went on video rather than just audio, and I became present to how much love, how much presence, and how much time and energy I gave to this podcast, I actually started grieving the fact that I was closing this podcast. I mean, it's always going to exist, but I won't be pouring my love into it anymore. I started grieving, and I also started second guessing and doubting myself. Was I doing the right thing? Could I even have possibly two podcasts, the new podcast, Cancer and Courage, and also the Intuitive Pool? And it was like, the elastic band, the tension was pulling me back into the familiar. And because I was feeling sad, and I was, in so much appreciation and gratitude for my commitment to this podcast. But no, I won't continue it, because this is another big moment of in time in my own life where I am being very much pulled into new territory, and I'm very much being pulled to express myself in different forms and structures and ways. And similar to when I had the intuitive pull, well, the words were given to me in 2002, you're here to ignite people's spirits and hearts, but I had no idea what that meant, yet emotionally it completely overwhelmed me, and I knew that there was massive truth in those words. But from a practical perspective, I had zero idea what that meant. And I knew that if I continued to live my life in the familiar way that I had been living, which I was in an HR directorship role, that those words would just dissolve. And those words were very, very powerful and very, very potent and very, very calling. And so I decided to leave my HR directorship role to give these words the space that they needed for me to actually know what they meant at a practical level. And whilst it's not as dramatic as that, it feels like that to me, that I have to let go of this fully in order to fully surrender into the new. So that's what I wanted to begin this podcast with, and perhaps have you feel into what you are being pulled into, and potentially because of that, what you are being pulled to let go and surrender, and maybe even go through your own process of appreciation for the commitment that you've had to the former version of you, and, potentially those feelings of grief as well. All right, so let's begin with what I have learned through the decision to fully commit to leading this Intuitive Pull podcast. From my experience, podcasting has been one giant act of commitment, particularly in, the first, what are we now? 2026, and I started end of 2021, particularly the first 3-4 years. I was podcasting every week, if not more than every week. Sometimes I was podcasting a couple of times a week. And all of it has been created, through my hands. I have not outsourced the production of podcasting out to anybody else. I have presenced what I want to speak about. I have got on video. First of all, I got on audio, which was a whole lot easier, I have to say. And I put myself on video, I've recorded, I've then used publishing software to edit it. Sometimes I put music to it. And then, of course, I then released it, through Apple Podcasts, through Spotify, when I went on video, through YouTube. And then there were shorts that I would create from each episode. It's been a giant act of commitment. And I know that when I started podcasting, that it did inspire people in my community to start their own podcasts. And some people absolutely put all their love and time and energy into it like I did. And then, some of them, started quickly, with lots of gusto, and then the momentum stopped. And it is a giant act of commitment to fully give yourself over to loving on a podcast like I have done. Now, what have been the outcomes of that level of commitment? You might remember this episode in 2021. So much momentum was created through the level of commitment that I gave to this podcast. So much momentum. Momentum in terms of my level of presence, first of all, my level of observation, my thought leadership, the ideas that I was observing and gathering and putting together, and then speaking to them on the podcast. So much momentum about that. So much momentum about the attraction of people who really felt my words, felt the messages, and wanted to come into coaching with me. I was, so grateful for that. It was, really, really present in 2021 in particular. Is that right? In 2022 in particular, I should say. That's when that podcast, Momentum Serves the Committed, was released in 2022. Because that's what I was seeing. Momentum serves the committed. I was seeing myself, observing myself, experiencing myself as, fully committed, and momentum was being served to me because of that. What also occurred as a result of fully committing to this podcast? This is another episode that you would have heard about, and probably it was 2022 or 2023, where Grace came in and did the heavy lifting for me. Again, those words, Grace does the heavy lifting, those words were not given to me. I'd never heard anyone use those words in that way before. But through this active commitment to podcasting, to observe, to be present, to gather thoughts, to intuitively see things, to put things together, my experience was that Grace came and did the heavy lifting for me, which was a different experience to what a lot of coaches were being taught out there in the world, around a lot of heavy lifting with funnels and with a huge social media presence and, with the technical, transactional way of doing things. It wasn't the first time that I'd learnt this. I'd learnt this, years before, about the power of resonance and how resonance is so connective. It goes beyond even sometimes the need for many words or much explanation, and definitely it does not need any convincing. Resonance brings people together. It's like they see themselves in you. They see themselves in the energy that you're carrying, in the energy or in the words that you're using. They feel, it's a feeling experience. And because of that, Grace works at an energetic level. And so Grace came and did the heavy lifting. There were some beautiful examples of where Grace came in, and I caught up with a friend of mine last Friday, and we were talking about two experiences that she had remembered and was in so much appreciation of because of this podcast. One of them was an episode that I recorded. I may have spoken to this in the last episode. We didn't think he'd take his own life was the title of the episode. And I was interviewing at the time some friends, actually. And one of my friends had lost his brother to suicide, and they had never, ever expected that this is where he would go. And so he and his brother-in-law founded a community organisation called Spoke to a Bloke. And I wanted to get their message out there. Now, my friend was, at the time, was in a very dark place. And she was considering a similar act for herself. And up came on her phone we never thought he'd take his own life. And she was intrigued by the fact that that had just appeared on her phone when this is what she had been considering. And so she listened to that episode. And later on, she told me, because she wrote to me not long after that moment, she listened to that episode and she wrote her thoughts and feelings out as she listened to that episode. And by the time she finished that episode, she had shifted. And that's when she wrote to me. And I was so incredibly grateful that Grace did the heavy lifting in that moment. Now, when we spoke on Friday, that feels like years ago. But it was wonderful to remember. Now, another thing was a reminder of another episode that I had recorded. And I can't actually remember the title in this moment. But it was an episode where I was interviewing a beautiful girl called Aaliyah. And Aaliyah was a girl that had been adopted from Kenya. And she had also been having a dark night of the soul, wondering why was she the lucky one to be living in Australia when, her brothers and sisters back in Kenya were living very tough lives. And her mum had decided to invest an inheritance that she'd received from her auntie to build some schools in Kenya. And this dark night of the soul was happening when Aaliyah was in Kenya and was seeing things that were shocking to her. And that was that in the slums, the girls, when they got their period, they didn't have any sanitary means to look after themselves when they had their periods. They didn't have pads, they didn't have tampons, they didn't have period cups, they had nothing. And there would be men standing at the toilets of the slums, holding up pads, telling them that they would give them those pads if they would have sex with them. And so, of course, this was extremely disturbing to Aaliyah. And so she began to follow her own intuitive pull, and she created this period poverty charity. And so through the Intuitive Pull podcast, because I interviewed Aaliyah, a whole lot of people came on the bandwagon and started fundraising for Aaliyah so that Aaliyah could continue what she was doing, where she had employed different seamstresses, and they were creating sanitary products to give to these girls in the slums. And it was so important because the girls, when they didn't have sanitary means, they wouldn't go to school. And so Aaliyah had thought about, the ripple effect of not having sanitary means and not being educated, and then the consequences of that. Whereas in contrast to that, should they have those sanitary means, they would be able to go to school, and then the consequences of that. So I was being reminded about the many ripples that happened because of that interview with Aaliyah, and how many of the listeners took it upon themselves to fundraise. And I can't remember the amount of sanitary products that were then enabled through the Intuitive Pull podcast, but it was something like over 700 girls had been impacted by this. So once again, Grace came and did the heavy lifting, and you think about the impact of that. That is just absolutely enormous. Another thing I learned about committing to the Intuitive Pull podcast was that this level of commitment that I've been talking about, this level of presence, this level of observation, and this thought leadership that came about because I knew I'd be podcasting regularly, I allowed myself to be in the world. I allowed myself to be in the world. That might not mean much to you, or maybe it will, because I'm not going to use any more words to describe that, because it's a feeling experience in my heart when I say that I allowed myself to be in the world. So, yeah, I'm not going to explain anything more. I'm just going to let that one land how it does. Another thing that I learnt through podcasting, I actually had always defined myself as being a non-technical person. Well, how false was that belief about myself? I did a podcasting course at the end of 2021, which taught me how to create a podcast. And I actually loved it. I actually loved the tech. And the ripples of that have been that because I learned the technology to produce a podcast, and because, especially in the early days, I started to use music in the background of the episodes, I was walking one day a couple of years ago and just had this intuitive pull, this moment of convergence, actually, that was the moment. And I podcasted about that too, where I saw all these different expressions of me. And one of them was, I love creating, always have, love creating. You know, in the early 20s, I would be going to Mosman Evening College and learning how to do LED light windows. And I went to an interior design course. And then when I was in the HR and training world, especially in the training world, I would write training programs from scratch. I've always loved to create. And right now I'm in a huge creative period of my life, huge. I also 1,000% believe in the power and the productivity of meditation. So much of what I do in my work comes through meditation, whether that be through a closed eye meditation, whether that me being in a walking meditation, I'm walking by the beach, I'm listening to beautiful music, I might even be listening to a podcast, but my mind is open, it's vast, it's receptive, and I see things, and I love music. So I had this moment of convergence. Why don't I create a meditation program where I'm sharing my thought leadership through meditation, where I'm researching the most perfect music, and where I'm bringing other people into a meditative experience in however they want to use it, in whatever way they want to use it. How about I do that and be of service to the world there in that way? And so there have been several 9-week meditation programs that have been delivered because I learned how to do the technology through podcasting. And most recently, I have committed another giant act of commitment, can I say? I have committed to delivering 52 meditations through the Abundant Leader Meditation Program, which is this time hosted on Substack. So the meditations are delivered every Sunday at 4 o'clock for 52 weeks for $99. We are now in week 4. Week 4 was delivered on Sunday. 19 beautiful people have subscribed to that paid program, $99 for 52 weeks. Another giant act of commitment. Now, these meditations, I initially called them the Abundant Leader Transmissions. And then I also used the word activation. And on Sunday, or Saturday, I should say, I was thinking there's just too many words. Too many words. What are these really? Well, they're meditations. That's what they are. But they're meditations that activate. They're meditations that activate. They're not just meditations that you sit and you go into nothingness. You absolutely open up and they activate you. And I've been having beautiful, beautiful feedback of how these meditations have been activating. In fact, I had one on Sunday. I had just published it at 4 o'clock. I was at the airport waiting to pick up Mum. It was 5 o'clock. And this beautiful comment came through on that Substack post about how that particular meditation went boom for her. They were the exact words, and how she realized that the end of an era of punishment has just finished. The era of punish has just finished. Wow. Wow. Is that profound or what? So had I not podcasted, I would not have learnt the technology. Had I not learnt their technology, I would never have created 9-week meditation programs. Had I not created 9-week meditation programs, I would never have surrendered into this new vision of delivering on Sundays at 4 o'clock a leader to the theme of the abundance that sits within us, the abundance that sits within us, and to have us move from there throughout the week. You know, I've encouraged people to listen to the meditations on Sundays or Monday mornings and let that inform the week and continue coming back. So that I will put a link in the show notes. I would love you, love you to subscribe to that. You know, since James reminded me of the 100,000 downloads intention, I have an intention of 1,100 people subscribing to the Abundant Leader Meditations. And I would love you to help me achieve that vision whilst you are graced by your own inner wealth and how that moves and how that creates in the world. So that's what I learned. Now I want to speak about what I'm very, very aware of in this moment, April 2026, what I have been aware of throughout this year, the year of the fire horse. So my final parting words of wisdom, may they do beautiful things to you, powerful things to you. We are in another era where it's time to follow the intuitive pull to the level of surrender and letting go, and to the level of commitment that I have just been speaking about with this podcast. This is a time, particularly for some people, this is not true for everybody. So let me qualify who this is for. I'm speaking in this moment to people who have a wealth of wisdom, who have been already powerful, already successful, who have already lived authentic lives, who have an abundance of love within them, of care within them, an abundance of sincerity, integrity, an abundance of vision, an abundance of wanting to give, to pour out, to make a difference in the world, to know that they are here to make a difference in the world in their own unique blueprint, and that there is a choice within them that their life would not be fulfilled should they not do that fully. So that is who I'm speaking to in this moment. So if that is you, please listen. We are at a time in our lives where it is not about doing the same do. It is not about repeating the same messages and only the same messages that we have been speaking of for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. This is a time where we are not here to express ourselves in the same way, through the same channels, through the same services as we have been over the last little while. This is, I'm going to be a little bit pointed here, but this is not a time for laziness. and for attaching to the way that we have done things. And there is a little bit of laziness if we are attaching to the way that we have done things, being the only way that we are here to do things. There's a little bit of laziness in that. Because how can all that you have become squeeze into the ways in which you have led? I have never experienced a year like this. You know me. I love living in the ethereal world. It is very, very easy for me to connect into the world of the formless, into the world of being connected to all that is, into the inspiration and the seeing and the intuiting and the visioning and the world of the formless. It is so easy for me to live in that world of, limitlessness. It is so easy for me to live there. And we are to bring that down to earth. The focus this year is on the earth, boots on the ground. We are to surrender not only to the abundance of the formless world. That's why I created the Abundant Leader meditation. So much abundance within us, so much abundance as we connect into the world of the limitless. And we are to bring that down to earth in new ways. Our leadership is meant to be expressed wider because of our depth. It's not only about going deeper. There was a time for us to go deeper. And yes, we'll always go deeper. But that is not the main focus now. The main focus is to appreciate who we have become and to go wider with it, to be more generous with it, to give it away in new ways, in new channels, in new streams, in new communities, with new people and new circumstances on the earth. And I'll be honest here, because I am intuitive and I can feel people, like people just arrive in my awareness. I actually know what I'm saying, what I'm proposing, this wideness, I actually can see in the community that I know. I actually know who this is for. And so I see you, just letting you know. I see you. And so therefore, as much as we are being directed to go wider, to let go of doing things in the same way and in the only ways in which we have done things in the past, we are being really asked to open up our intuition to see what these plot twists are, what these new streams of service are, what these new doorways are, and who these people are that we are here to give our love and wisdom and power to. And so therefore, it is a big moment of surrendering again, of following those intuitive directives without knowing how they're all going to pan out, without any guarantees, without any certainty again. And being in full trust and faith that our presence and our intuition and our commitment to bringing this to earth, to following these guidances and directives, that Grace will do the heavy lifting again. And that momentum will serve the committed again. And so please, please hear my words. Please say yes to my words. If you know this is you, don't pretend that this isn't for you. Don't ignore all those intuitive nudges that you've already had. Don't play safe. That's the point. When we attach to the ways in which we have shown up in the world, it's about safety. This is not about safety. This is about being in the guts again, in your guts, in the guts of your courage and your bravery and your conviction again, your boldness of your audacity. It's being in the guts of that, in the whole human experience again. But knowing that we are standing very tall on the shoulders of all the wisdom that we have gathered, our self-value, our self-worth, our self-trust, our self-love. We are strong. Our foundation, our core is strong. So for me, I'm letting go of the Intuitive Pull podcast. The plot twist of owning that I'm a cancer coach in addition to my other coaching work, I have fully surrendered into that. It feels freeing actually to have actually owned and communicated in the world that this is also who I am. It's actually really freeing to own who we are. It's really freeing to not keep it to ourselves. It's really freeing. In addition to my one-on-one work in the cancer space, I also have a group program, an 8-week group program, because not everybody can afford one-on-one. And some people love community. One of the people that committed to the group program is somebody who I am doing one-on-one with in the cancer space. And she said to me, I want to come into that group space because I want to be with like-minded people. I want to be in community with people who are going through what I'm going through. And I want to share in that community with them. Wow, I never saw that until she told me. So you see, we move and then we learn. We see more once we've moved. And in this moment, I'm also creating for the cancer space a 5 meditation program where they can be with all the things that I teach and that I hold people in when I'm working with them with cancer. And you know what? I'm going to do something different. I'm going to put ads to that meditation program. I've never done that before. Let's see how we go. I want the work to go out wide. And I will also be creating a self-study program, again, teaching all the things that I teach in coaching for the cancer space for those people who are happy to do the work by themselves, the reflective work by themselves, at an entry point that is easy for them to afford. So I'm doing my part to be able to support wider in ways that are accessible to people. And the other thing that I'm doing, in addition to the Abundant Leader meditations with that goal of 1,100 people, is that I'm offering another opportunity for people that I'm speaking to here, the ones that I just qualified. You do not need years of coaching. I don't need years of coaching. You don't need a mastermind. I don't really need a mastermind. And you don't need overconsumptive amount of calls, one-on-ones, group calls, masterclasses. You do not need that. I don't need that. But what is valuable is a space where the full commitment can be made in a coaching partnership. The full surrender to going wide can be made in a coaching partnership. And the full seeing of all of those streams of new income, of new service, of new impact can be seen intuitively, because we can only see what we can see ourselves. And sometimes, if you are fully committed to seeing beyond what you have been able to see, you can do that on your own. And sometimes fully committing to a coaching partnership allows the seeing to show itself. There are new streams of income to be seen, new streams of service, new channels, new pathways, new doorways, fuller expression, bold, audacious, fully in. This is what is here for people that I just qualified. Mirrors of me. Not playing safe. Being in the full human experience of fully surrendering into the new, into being more generous with your wisdom and your love. In the fire horse year, on the earth, boots on the ground. And my final comment as I close: you can't see what you can't see until you desire big again. You can't see what you can't see until you desire big again. And to desire big again, the fire has to return. The fire of audacity, the fire of intuition, the fire of vision, the fire of your personal power, and the fire of your love. Fire has to be embraced to be able to desire big again. And when you can desire big again through that fire that has been ignited, then you get shown things that you couldn't see before when the fire was not there. When instead perhaps attachment was, or safety was, or staying in your own lanes was. This is about multiple lanes, wide. So on that note, I will complete the Intuitive Pull podcast for the final time. I think it's a wonderful way to end in this wideness, in the gutsy human experience it is to release yourself even with more freedom and more power than we have before. I think it's a beautiful, spectacular, even ceremonial way, I would say, to do the intuitive pull, the honor that it deserves and the honor that we deserve as we bring this to completion and we surrender into the new. Details for overflow are in the show notes for those who felt I was speaking to you. Details for the Abundant Leader Meditations are also in the show notes. Thank you. So much love. Thank you for listening over the years or watching over the years. Thank you for the relationship we've had through the podcast. Thank you.